Okay, in this video we are going to talk about AWS S3 pre-signed URLs. And what these are temporary URLs that can give you or can give your users access to S3 buckets without enabling public access to those buckets. So this would be for temporary content, for instance, like premium videos or any other content that you want to make accessible to users, but only for a temporary basis. So those URLs will expire and you could set the expiration time. So I am going to show you our setup for this. We have an S3 bucket right here where we're going to upload some files and we're going to give them a pre-signed URL. We have an EC2 instance right here that I'm going to SSH into and run those commands from. Okay, so first off, let's go into that instance. Here's the public IP. I have an SSH, I have my my session here. I'm just going to SSH into that instance. Like this, and then ec2 user at, and then okay, so there I'm inside my ec2 instance. I am now going to issue those commands, and just so you can see where I'm getting these commands from, this is the AWS CLI, and I'm going to be using this S3 pre-sign command. I'm going to show you there's a few hiccups that we're going to encounter along the way, and also I'm going to show you this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to upload an unencrypted file and then an SSE-S3 signed file, and then we're going to use a KMS encrypted file. That should be encrypted. And that should be encrypted too. There. So we'll use those three examples so you could see how it works for each type of file. So what we'll do is we will go into our S3 bucket, and I'm just going to upload a simple file without any encryption. So I'm going to upload this JPEG file, and I'm not going to use any encryption on this file. So here it is. If I look here, there's no encryption. If I try and access the object, so I won't like, actually, if I do it here, and I have, by the way, I have versioning enabled on this. So if I try to access it here, I get access denied. Okay, so I can't just access that object because the bucket has not been configured for any kind of public access. If I look here, there's no static website hosting. The permissions are all set to be private, like here, so it's blocking all public access. So here's the actual object URL, and there, so it's access denied. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to issue the commands here, and I'm going to just copy it from here so you can see how it works. So here's the command. I'm going to break it down. So AWS S3 pre-sign, and then I give the S3 URL of that object. So there's my bucket / hello world.jpg. I set the expire in. Now by default, I think it's 3600. I think it's an hour, but I can set it to be whatever I want. So for this purposes, I'm only going to set it to 15 seconds. And I'm also going to explicitly set the region as US East 1. Now, you could get into some problems. You don't have to. According to the documentation, it won't tell you to set this explicitly, but you should, just to be on the safe side, because that's where our bucket is. And once I do this, it's going to generate a temporary URL that I'm only going to have 15 seconds to use. So let me just get ready to paste it, which will be, here. So I'm going to paste that URL, and there. So there, so just generated this URL for us. I'm going to take that URL, I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so there's our file. Now I'm going to refresh it a few times and there we go. So now it expired. So right there, request has expired. So as you can see, it was only available temporarily. Okay, but we know it works. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the same file, but I'm going to encrypt it with AES or the regular, the S3 encryption. So I'm going to add the file, and then I'll say next, next, and then down here I'm going to say Amazon S3 master key. So this is SSE S3. So we'll let S3 manage the keys, and we'll say upload. And now if I look at the version, so this is the latest version now. So this latest version has AES 256. Okay, so I'm going to try and issue another pre-signed URL. Just like that, same thing. So it gives me a new URL. I'm going to paste that in here. Okay, and this works. Great. So now again, I have 15 seconds to use this URL. I'm going to refresh it until it expires. Okay, so there, it just expired. Now, for the third case, I'm going to upload the same file, but now I'm going to give it a KMS encryption. So I will upload that file, next, next, and now here I'm going to say use KMS master key, and I'll give it this key, and I'll say upload. Okay, so now if you look here, you see there it has KMS encryption. So now if I try and do the same thing, this is where I'm going to run into some problems. If I just do the same thing as I did before in the other two cases, so I'll just issue the same command, pre-sign. Okay, I'm going to get this. Now if I paste that over here, you see now I get, I don't know if you could see this, request specifying server-side encryption with KMS require AWS signature 4, right? So you have to set the signature 4 before you issue the pre-signed URL. And the way to do that is, I'll show you the command. It's right here. So it's this command here, which will set up your AWS configuration to use signature version 4. So I'll do it like that. So watch, when I do that, if I look in my AWS directory, I'll see the config file there. This was just created now. If I cat this, you see how S3, for my default profile, S3 has been configured to use signature version S3v4. And I found some documentation on this here, which I'm going to include. If you see here, you can explicitly opt in and set signature S3v4 in your AWS config file. Okay, so you need to do this. You need to have the signature version 4 if you're going to have KMS encrypted files. So now that we have KMS encrypted files, we're going to reissue the command. Oops. We're going to reissue the command like this to pre-sign it again. And now it should work because we're using the right signature version. So let me copy that. And there we go. So now it works with KMS. So I'm going to wait for it. There it is. And now it expired. And now we've shown that we can use it now for unencrypted, for AES encrypted, and KMS encrypted files.